She was an unknown Air Force legend until a military jet called for help, and this story takes us back to the skies of America where a young woman whose name had barely been mentioned outside her base ended up changing aviation history forever. Her journey began not in the cockpit of a fighter jet but in the quiet suburbs where as a child she would lie on the grass watching contrails carve patterns across the blue sky, dreaming of flight. From the earliest age she carried notebooks filled with sketches of planes, writing down the names of jets she read about in library books, from the F-16 to the C-130 Hercules. But for her, dreams had to face reality. She came from a modest family, her father working in a factory and her mother a nurse, and military service seemed to be the only doorway that could bring her close to the sky. She joined the Air Force determined not just to serve but to break barriers, though she knew that being a woman in the cockpit was not going to be easy. Training was brutal, physically and mentally, every flight a test of nerves, every classroom lesson a demand for perfection. Yet she pressed on, often practicing until the hangar lights dimmed, running emergency drills in her mind before falling asleep. By the time she earned her wings, she had gained a reputation for calm precision. Colleagues described her as quiet but razor-sharp, the kind of pilot you wanted in an emergency. Still, she remained largely invisible to the outside world. The spotlight shone on others, combat veterans, decorated commanders, but her destiny waited in silence. That day came during a routine training exercise over American skies when a military jet sent out a distress call. It was an F-16, one of the fastest fighters in the fleet, and its pilot had experienced sudden instrument failure at high altitude. The jet was speeding through the sky with minimal control, the pilot's oxygen mask fogged, alarms blaring, and panic beginning to creep in. Air traffic control scrambled, searching for the nearest available support, and that's when her radio crackled with urgency. She had been flying a support aircraft nearby, nothing glamorous, just a standard patrol, but at that moment she became the closest lifeline to a brother in arms. She responded instantly, her voice calm over the frequency, steadying the panicked pilot. "Stay with me, I've got you," she said, locking her eyes on the horizon as she angled her jet into escort position. It was a maneuver that required incredible skill, because she had to align her slower aircraft close enough to guide the speeding fighter without colliding. Every second the distressed pilot's voice trembled over the radio, but her tone never wavered. She spoke with the authority of experience, telling him how to control his breathing, how to make small corrections instead of desperate movements, how to ignore the screaming alarms and focus on her instructions. Minutes stretched into eternity as the F-16 lost altitude, wobbling dangerously close to stall. Fuel levels dropped. Control towers prepared for the worst, fire trucks already dispatched toward the runways below. But she refused to let fear take over. She remembered every drill, every late-night session practicing emergencies, and she poured all of it into guiding the failing jet safely home. "Follow my wing, don't think of anything else," she commanded. Slowly, painstakingly, she brought the fighter into visual alignment with her plane, almost like guiding a blindfolded runner down a narrow path. The ground crews below could hardly believe what they were watching on radar. Two blips, one strong and one fading, inching closer to safety. At last the runway appeared. The pilot in distress confessed he could barely see through the haze in his mask, his oxygen systems almost completely failed, and the instrument panel looked like a Christmas tree of chaos. She decided to do the unthinkable, to guide him with her landing instead of letting him attempt it alone. She dropped altitude, called out every step, flaps, throttle, angle, and he mirrored her moves by instinct. The two planes descended together, wheels screaming as they kissed the asphalt. Both aircraft came to a halt with emergency crews rushing in, but it was clear to everyone who had saved that jet, that pilot, and potentially a town below from disaster. The story spread quickly through the base, then through the Air Force, and eventually into the press. Reporters called her a hero, but to her squadron she had simply proven what they already knew, that she was one of the best, steady in the storm. She received commendations, yet she never sought the cameras or applause. For her, the moment was about duty, about never letting a fellow pilot fall. What made her legend grow even more was what happened afterward. The pilot she saved wrote her a letter, saying that in those minutes when his world was collapsing, her voice was the only anchor that kept him alive, and that every milestone he celebrated with his family from that day onward was because of her. She continued to fly, train, and mentor younger aviators, always carrying that same quiet discipline. Many of her students would later recall how she emphasized calm under pressure, how she told them that real strength is not in loud words but in steady actions. The day she retired, the hangar was filled with both men and women who stood in respect, knowing they had witnessed a living legend who had once been unknown until a jet in crisis revealed her to the world. And though she left the cockpit, her story continued to inspire countless cadets, proving that true heroes often rise not from glory seeking but from the simple, unshakable promise to be there when someone calls for help. And so in America, in the annals of Air Force history, her name may not shine in the brightest headlines, but among those who know the sky, she remains immortal, the unknown legend who became unforgettable when a military jet called for help.